Man, fun to see the players happy and excited and to have a tangible result for all their hard work. Really, some nice moments in the locker room between coaches and players, and just a reminder of man, the thin line between success and failure, at least from the scoreboard. But nice to be able to acknowledge and just have something tangible to show for their efforts. Really impressed after analyzing the game and going through it of Kurt Bankert's performance. The delivery, the timing of the delivery, the accuracy, the decision making, and consistency. I thought he was exceptional, and I was especially impressed because of the injury he suffered the week before and how resilient he was in practice. He was looking for ways. He didn't miss a single rep, by the way, in practice all week, and that he was in quite a bit of pain, and he's really tough. But that mindset in practice led to his performance, and I think inspired our team. That quite frankly, this is, he's going to do whatever he can to help our team. I think we're getting more clear about the roles and the usage of our offensive personnel. I thought Coach and I and the offensive staff did a really nice job of getting the ball to the right players on the right type of plays to highlight what they're able to do. And so I'm speaking specifically about Albert Reed. I like his role. I like Olamide's role. I like Smoke's role. I like Donnie Dowling's role, Keon. There's starting to be some pretty clear not only performance abilities, but capacities that are starting to match now within our offense, and where players are getting the ball and how they're getting it and when they're getting it, that gives us a chance to be more consistent. I think it's the second week in a row where our quarterback has not been sacked, which is also, so we're eliminating minus yardage plays as well. And I think for the most part, we played cleaner from a penalty perspective, with the exception of one play I can think of during the game from an offensive perspective in terms of penalties. Defensively, it was also the best we'd performed for the longest amount of time. The number of big plays against us is continuing to go down. The run defense consistency still, I would say, is improving and is ahead of the pass defense consistency. Part of that is by just nature of the number of players playing in our secondary to this point. Really impressed with Andrew Brown, especially in pass situations. He continues to just be completely disruptive, and teams that don't have some kind of plan to chip him or double him or do something, we end up sacking the quarterback pretty early and pretty often. And then if they don't adjust, that will keep happening. Jack Powers is emerging as just a size, and with his size and consistency to be in the throwing lanes, and as well as playing the run effectively, as well as Eli Handback. So those two players took a step forward in this game. Zach Bradshaw's best game of the year to this point, and consistent play at the safety spots. And so, again, I thought it was a step forward. If there was anything that I thought one of the biggest plays in the game was Kareem Gibson's interception. That was following right around the time of Joe Reed's long kick return. And so there was a cycle of plays in there that I considered critical plays that helped us win and move the game forward. Nick Conte still continues to be a weapon for us at punt, on the punt team and as our punter. And I think for the fourth straight week, our team improved, which I'm taking gratification in. Having said that, we certainly have not arrived. I'm excited about the progress we're making. I'm excited about the win. But you'll find with me, this is a fairly consistent approach, or actually a very consistent approach, and now it's right back to the things that we need to continue to work on and improve. So, yeah, that's what I thought about the game, and I'll take questions if you have some.
With Juan unavailable, Kareem and Miles went pretty much the whole way. What are realistic expectations for them in their first year of serious playing time?
Yeah, both Kareem and Miles, I like the way they played. So Miles, man, he was consistent from beginning to end. If you watch the game, the play that will be most noticeable was the stop and go that went for the long yardage. But if you think about now where the ball went to his side and who else and what other plays are being made, there weren't many. And so he really played well within the defense and played consistently. Kareem Gibson, the same. gave up one play, a post corner, but other than that, played very consistently. That position is one, but were mostly negative plays remembered more than positive plays, other than Kareem's interception. But I was encouraged. I really was. And so they played assignment sound football for almost the entire game against a quality passer, with each having basically one play that was noticeable from a negative standpoint, and a lot of really positive plays that weren't noticeable by the public just by the nature of how they played. But they both stepped up and performed well in a short amount of time. I'm talking about Miles in particular, as Juan went out the first play of the game.
Bronco, I think you mentioned way back at your introductory press conference visiting with David Cutcliffe, being impressed.
Yeah.
What was it that you took away there that impressed you by the way they kind of go about
things? Coach Cutcliffe is one of my my favorite people that's also a coach. When I was still the coach at BYU, much before UVA ever came on the radar, I was looking for maybe similar approaches and similar settings with people that I thought had character and integrity and were getting the most out of their players, and really specific about program design, meaning matching a program to a place to allow that place to have success. And on the AFC board of directors, the two people that sit on each side of me are David Cutcliffe and Pat Fitzgerald at Northwestern and Duke. And I've become friends with both of them and really admire both of them. And they're bright and articulate and have depth and substance and have designed really nice programs for each of their places specifically. And so I just I thought simply to ask, as at BYU, that I thought we had a lot in common and would they be interested in an exchange, and I would come to them. And so on that same trip, I visited Coach Cutcliffe and Pat at Northwestern, and again, I was really impressed with the depth, the substance, and intent of how to get the most out of young people, but also how to get the most out of them in a specific place and environment that really emphasizes academics and character. And I thought both, and still think both, do a really nice job. And so I've remained and am still, I consider, good friends with both, and I admire and respect both. And this will be the first time I've coached against Coach Cutcliffe, but man, I think the world of him. I really am impressed.
Hey, Bronco, as a defensive guy, I'm sure that there are Saturday nights when you look at some of the scores that come across, and your game and Duke's game and Pittsburgh, North Carolina, where it's kind of shocking to see how much offense is being played, or maybe how much defense isn't being played.
Yeah.
Where is the line there? Is it that the spread offenses have just become so much more sophisticated that defenses can't keep up, or are people using all their best athletes on offense now?
No, I think as you look, college football is changing. There is one rule in particular that is driving a substantial amount of this, and this is the offensive lineman being able to go downfield. And that in and of itself creates what are called RPOs, or run-pass options, which means that the offense can basically block a play like it's a running play, with linemen, even though it's supposed to be 3 yards downfield, they're regularly downfield 5 to 6. And then if the run doesn't look exactly right, can throw the ball as well. And so basically defense is very difficult anyway, knowing it's reactionary and you have to identify specific cues to determine run or pass. Well, sometimes if those aren't determinable until a little bit after the play is started, not initially, but the play then is commenced and not quite midstream, and then you to find out whether it's run or pass. With mobile quarterbacks, that becomes quite different. I don't think the rule is good for college football, but it is good for entertainment. And those two things sometimes are different. And so if viewership is up, I'm sure the rule will stay the same. If viewership is down, then there'll be possibly another rule. But the nature of the offenses based on rule change has now made it to where it's quite difficult. Quality of players at quarterback, meaning dual threat, with offensive linemen being able to go downfield, has now made it significantly different, regardless of who's playing. If you look, I guess maybe one of the industry standards right now is, you would say, Alabama. And so Alabama plays Ole Miss, and there's 40-something points on the board. And you'd say, how come? Those are really good coaches. Those are really good players. And so there's a shift in terms of just within what rules and specifications are now as to which side it's tilted. And I think that attributes for a lot of it. Even more credit to those programs that consistently play good defense. And so what we're finding right now is we're learning to play stretches at a time, but you can also see with the laps here or there how quickly points can go on the board. And so it really requires a concentration, maturity, and execution level that comes through volume to be able to handle that and keep it all in check for 4 quarters.
So as a numbers guy, how do you have to change the way you assess whether you guys did well or not?
I have a really clear idea. Yards per play matters a lot, and yards and points per play matter a lot. There's so many teams going fast. Total defense, not so relevant, and scoring defense. And so scoring defense, not necessarily only in terms of how much is given up during the game, but versus how many plays you're actually asked to play. And I'm not in any position right now, at least here at Virginia, to be speaking toward leading the country yet or anything like that, but I know exactly what it looks like, and I know exactly what metrics are to be in the top 25, and we measure consistently against that because it just simply allows us to know how many plays and possibly which positions are outside of that framework to where we can get them caught up as fast as possible, which is happening in relation to the type of offenses that we're playing against. But in terms of how I measure, points still rule the day, but also points versus number of plays. And those two things, if your program isn't designed well, you can end up playing pretty well, but giving up a lot of points because you're not intentionally managing it offensively or special teams wise also.
Bronco, you said Saturday that your margin for error defensively was really thin with Juan being out. Obviously, Tim being out. I assume we'll know more about these on Thursday unless you want to say it now.
I can address one thing right now, thanks to Jim, as I'm learning kind of the rules, at least in relation to the ACC, but also UVA specifically. We have 4 players out for the season. Tim Harris is out for the season. He has had shoulder surgery. Malcolm Cook is out for the season, and I'm just going to say medical condition on that. Christian Brooks is out for the season. He's a first year with a really bright future with the shoulder surgery, and Sean Carl, an offensive lineman, is out for the season with the back injury. Other players, their status will be updated on Thursday when that happens. But yes, in relation to Saturday's game, the 2 players that we anticipated being the starting corners, Juan and Tim, were not available, that's just part of college football.
With that being said, still going forward, your secondary is kind of not probably as deep as you want it to be. Your secondary coach is Nick Howell, who's also defensive coordinator. He doesn't speak with us at all yet. But can you give us some background on him? I know for 1 year he called plays for you at BYU.
Yes.
How far do you guys go back, and what do you like about him kind of taking on this challenge?
He's exceptional. So I'll give you the history first. Every one of my defensive coaches, other than Coach Ruff, obviously, either played for me or was a graduate assistant for me. I always intend to do it that way. I think the best organizations, and from my passion about studying organizations, hire from within. And it allows your program to accelerate and be seamless. And that doesn't mean to have yes men. That means to have a diversity of thought, but also points of reference and trust that's already established, and certain methodologies that really allow you to continue success. But also, I love fresh thinking, new thinking, innovative thinking, and energy. And so between Nick Howell and Kelly Papinga and Shane Hunter and Vic Soto as a defensive graduate assistant, we've been through a lot of different things together. Coach Howell was one of the best graduate assistants that I've ever had, who also trained Kelly Papinga. Kelly Papinga actually trained Shane Hunter. Shane Hunter is training Vic Soto. And so there's a pedigree that's happening that will end up being wildly successful wherever these guys end up going. I hope they never leave. But Nick he knows our defense. He's a master of our defense. In fact, when other staffs want to learn about it, he's the one that they request and want to know from. Every possible way to leverage and gain an advantage for a secondary player or us defensively. He's not only known it, but explored it and studied taped and taken professional visits, and he's one of the best minds that I've worked with from a defensive perspective. Right now, he's running the clicker, and simply the reason he doesn't speak to you guys as media is because I still call the plays, and in essence, it would cut into our competitive work to have 2 of us doing that when that can be going full speed and I can be doing this anyway, and so it allows us to move forward. And going back to the time where he did call plays, all that happened was I realized by me not being involved, number one, I missed having an influence on game day, but it was slowing us down as I've allocated the other coach to the offensive side, counting on me to be on the defense. And so the number of resources, number of experience, but also our workforce model wasn't as efficient, and it wasn't versus his capability.
Albert Reed was on fire after the game talking about that college game day. At what point did you learn about it, and what was your reaction?
I don't know about it, to be honest. So.
Where he said Virginia probably wouldn't win a game this year.
Oh, who said it? Oh, yeah.
He also said that Central Michigan was going to look past you guys because they played Western Michigan this weekend,
Oh.
so you guys were like a look-over game.
Well, yeah, it shows you how much, well, it's an authentic view of how much I pay attention. I didn't know, and I didn't know my players knew. And so I guess you can look at that a couple of different ways. I got plenty to work on just to make sure our team is ready. Good.
Don't make Albert
Maybe I had to send him a thank you. You know, there is College Game Day is an entertainment show that centers around college football, and fill in whatever else you'd like.
Bronco, I understand Eric Smith had a pretty good game the other day. Can you talk about his progress this year, and what do you think about him overall?
Eric is full of energy, and he's a catalyst for our team. I don't know if he's ever had a bad day since I've been here, and if he has, it was covered with a smile and a boisterous and confident approach. And if you have a chance, and I don't know how you would get to see this play, but on one of our scoring plays, he was downfield at least 30 yards running full speed and makes a block on about the 5-yard line. There you go, will development. And he was on the catapult, was clocked at 16 miles an hour on that play for an offensive lineman. That's hauling. And when you see it on film, it's impressive. And so he's been trained to do that in our practices, but just by his nature, he's doing it as well. The offensive line is developing, again, 2 games without a sack, and he's good for our team. And he's a good person and a good player. I would take as many of Eric Smith's as I could in our program.
James on the broadcast made a big deal on that.
Oh, good.
They pointed it out.
Oh, it's an amazing play, and yeah, if you missed it, sorry about that. It's a good one.
Got a couple glimpses into Joe Reed's playmaking ability Saturday. What do you hope to get from him this season?
Wow,
what's his learning curve?
Yeah, his learning curve. We've had him at 2 or 3 different positions already because he is capable and he is athletic, and we knew right away that he was going to be able to help in his first year. Then he suffered an injury that kept him out most of fall camp, which by then other positions started to solidify, and we had an idea of where we thought we were going to play him. Now that position possibly might be okay, and we moved into another spot. But in the meantime, as he's developing at the inside receiver spot, that he would be able to certainly help us returning kicks. And the return to the 50-ish yard line was one of the plays that helped us be resilient and battle back in the game. And the team and the coaches have known what his ability is and have been anxious for him to have a play like that. Not only him, but our team. And so I don't think it surprised anyone, but it was really timely and when it came out. And his role will continue to expand as he now has a chance to settle into a position. It's no fault of his own that he hasn't been playing as much offensively on offense yet because we've moved him a number of times.
Coach, you've spoke a few times about reverting to bad habits when things don't go well. When you guys blow that lead, did you see any of that, and were you concerned / pleased with the way they then kind of regrouped?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. There were 2 plays that contributed to the so-called blown lead, and I give Central Michigan credit. I mean, I think they're 3-0 for a reason, and I think they're a good football team. But the long pass that happened against us and the interception for a touchdown, both of those plays, momentum is a huge part of the college game, and both those plays helped shift momentum. And there was a time, and I said this after the game, that it wasn't the same feeling as Richmond, but it was related, and you could sense it. And our coaches worked especially hard. Our players worked especially hard. And we have a few mantras and different things that we talk about when adversity hits, to keep fighting, to keep playing, to move on to the next play. And I heard all of those things. And eventually our entire culture, meaning not only our team, but the support people, the administration, the staff, just anyone associated with UVA football and the fans, at some point will put enough positive experiences in the bank with success where there'll be more hope and resiliency when that happens. And it just is clear where we're starting from. And because of that, I was even more pleased about the way the kids battled back. And we had the lead, we lost it or got to even, and then, man, they found a way in the critical times to make critical plays to win. And regardless of who that's against and when, that now goes in that vault, in that bank, to use as a positive frame of reference. When people can say, oh, you remember Central Michigan, the other team caught up, but we bounced back, and that's something now that can be used as a positive.
You've also talked about small successes kind of keeping you going, but you mentioned in the opening the importance of getting a result.
Yeah.
Was this kind of the week that you needed it? Did you sense that result had to be there soon?
Man, if you ask me, I needed it in week 1. But the players, it's pretty simple. We earned this one, and that's how it's going to be. And I've tried to frame that from the very beginning, that we're going to earn how we're viewed and how we're supported and how what our reputation is over time. And I think that we are making steady inroads through the first 4 weeks to what are they going to improve next? What's the next area that's going to look better? And I think there's an intrigue regarding that, and that sense of optimism that I think is growing with the reality of, man, we have a lot to do still. And we're just still at the very front end, but we're working at a really feverish pace with new design elements to try to accelerate this team's learning in a way that we haven't used before, that are starting to become effective.
Coach.
Yeah.
A lot of guys had big offensive days on Saturday, so Donnie Dowling had a career day that kind of got lost in the shuffle because of all the numbers. I guess has bounced back from whatever he did to his arm in the opener. Just can you talk about his progress?
Yeah, Donnie is he's really tough, and much like Kurt, if anyone knew or saw what it's like for him on a daily basis to be practicing and the grit and resolve it's taking, they'd be even more impressed with the numbers. And he's a consistent and reliable and explosive presence at the outside receiver spot. And now when we're matching him and possibly Keon on the other side or in different places with Olamide and Smoke and or Albert all out there at the same time, we become now more capable. And Donnie is not only doing a great job on the field, but if you had a chance to just watch him on the sideline, he was everywhere. And from a motivation standpoint, and leadership and maturity is starting to emerge with him that this team needs, and he's providing a lot of that now from an outside receiver perspective that's allowing Kurt now to stretch the field, which we've talked about for a couple of weeks, but that's starting to emerge. And it's not an accident that he's had a career day, and not an accident that the ball's starting to go downfield more. It's just we've been chipping away at it, and there were some signs that is getting some traction now.
Hey, Bronco, I know you are aware that UVA has had struggles on the road, and you talked about in your presser after the game last week how you kind of felt the here we go again thing when it got tied up. How do you kind of shed this sort of road struggle going into this game? What do you think it's going to take to kind of finally win a road game?
I don't think it's going to take anything different than what winning any normal game on the road was, and I'll be pretty blunt and transparent with you. I didn't know how long. I just had to ask Jim walking down the hall how long it's been, and that doesn't really matter to me. I know what exact preparation looks like, and I know what confidence looks like, and I know what the here we go again certainly didn't come from myself or our staff. It might have been. I did feel it kind of culturally, but that's not part of who we are as a coaching staff nor as a football program, and we've been. I think the players understand that, and I don't think it was, and I don't think it is something that, other than how fiercely we prepare, needs to be addressed, and certainly has to be by those covering the sport because of what I understand now is, was it 15 or 6? There we go. So there you go. But right now we play Duke, and I know exactly kind of where our team has to improve and grow and where our focus needs to be. And the more I focus on things that can't be controlled, which are all these other games, what good would it do for me to do that? So I'm looking forward on what we can do, not what hasn't been done.
Bronco, in the back here. You mentioned your esteem for David Cutcliffe. Going against him as a defensive-minded coach yourself, how fun is that to kind of match wits with a guy who specializes on the offensive side of things and some of the things he's been able to do?
It's the first time that I've been able to study an offense that's been led by him, and it doesn't take more than 3 or 4 or 5 plays or one series to say, oh, no wonder they're good. The design is good within the players that they have, within the schemes that they use, and how it's been implemented to make the most of their program at Duke. And they have the exact right person. They ought to keep him as long as they possibly can because he gives them a fantastic chance to compete against anybody, as they proved against Notre Dame this past week. And it's not an accident. And good people are drawn to good people. And Coach Ruff will say real recognizes real. I mean, they have players that recognize a real coach in a real setting and that has authenticity and capability. And so Duke's successes under Coach Cutcliffe are not an accident.
Bronco, Jack Powers was an offensive lineman at Arizona State, but he was a pretty standout defensive player coming out of high school, but was only recruited as an offensive player. What did you see? What led you to kind of make that transition for him? Was that more him doing, you're doing, need at defensive line? What happened there? How have you seen that transition at this point?
Need and opportunity met. We had a need for another big physical body as a run stopper and add a physical presence to our defensive line. At the same time, we received a release from Arizona State, which I investigate all those when they come across. So we watched film, went back to his high school film, saw it, and thought there'd be capability there. And took a chance after we met him and realized who he was, learned reports about how he worked, wondered if he had enough grit and work ethic and resolve to be in our program. I was convinced on all those things. And he did his part. And so now after 4 games on the defensive side, he's starting to emerge with knocking down passes and being strong in the interior and defending his run gap. And, man, he loves being here and he loves playing, which, again, I love coaching guys that are appreciative and thankful for the opportunities they've been given, and he certainly is one of those.
Bronco, I imagine seeing guys do things in practice and scrimmages is one thing, but seeing them do it on game Saturdays is something different. With what you've seen from Kurt, who had never started a game, how much does that maybe allow you guys to expand some of the things you do? He's got a pretty strong arm, and how much does that maybe allow you to put more stuff in that would allow you to go downfield like you have?
Well, I think that it's sequential and it's systematic and it's methodical. And through 4 weeks, we've seen our offense continue to grow and improve and grow and improve. And UConn maybe hang for a second and be on the verge of growing and maturing in a couple different ways and then taking a pretty significant step forward. But I think the biggest step forward in Central Michigan came because of some of the things we learned from the UConn game. And as Donnie just walked in, seeing Donnie and seeing Albert and seeing O and seeing Smoke and seeing Albert, and then realizing, oh, wait, if we did this with that person, then that wouldn't be able to be taken away. And so really that slight setback against UConn actually accelerated us, what we call falling forward versus Central Michigan. The key will be now with Kurt is not giving too much too fast, but continuing to look at what the roles are and look at how we might be able to expand slightly within what we already execute well without the risk of setting ourselves back by putting too much in and not being able to execute it. Because right now we're looking for consistency and execution as a team, not necessarily the roller coaster up, down, in between.
What, if anything in particular, impressed you about Duke being able to pull off the upset at Notre Dame? It's a pretty tough place to do that.
Yeah, no, I've coached at Notre Dame, and it is a tough place to do that. Just simply their ability to be consistent in that environment. Notre Dame made a number of mistakes in terms of where their fits were, their eye control, and basically just big plays. And those were created by Duke's scheme and their players executing. And to Duke's credit, they They weren't intimidated at all. They gained confidence as the game went on, and clearly the momentum had shifted, and they believed they could win, and had not only the physical presence to do so, but the mental capacity to pull it off. And so I'm sure that they view that as a huge win for their program, rightly so, and a momentum generator, and rightly so, because they earned it. They played a better football game than their opponent in that stretch.
Brian Kelly had an interesting observation last year before he came here. He said he was very interested to see what the stadium looked like and had never been here before. Have you ever played any of your 4 remaining road teams this year? How many ACC stadiums have you been to, and are you kind of curious what the setups are?
Yeah, I'm curious. If I knew our schedule, I would.
Georgia Tech, Duke, Virginia Tech, and Wake.
Played at Georgia Tech at BYU, and we won there. Wake, no. What were the other ones?
Virginia Tech.
Nope.
Virginia Tech and Duke.
Only I saw Duke under renovation when I was visiting Coach Cutcliffe. So, in terms of coaching and playing against those teams, only one. But I'm intrigued. Not so much as it will influence outcome, but just to see what the cultures are at the different places. And it'll be it's always interesting. You notice it usually for about 5 minutes as you walk into the stadium before the game starts, and then after that, you don't notice it much.
You'll notice the long walk at Duke back to locker. Coach, you've been using an interesting defensive line, at least for this game. I'm not sure if that was something you played with at times early in the year, but what was it that kind of the thought process that went into? How did you kind of stumble? Did it something you stumbled onto? Was that something you wanted to see with Juwan at nose tackle and Mark at end with Andrew? How did that kind of come about?
It's right now emerging as a nickel or pass rush specific combination of players that are fast and active and athletic enough to not only pressure the quarterback, but play screen and react to perimeter plays and chase things down. And so, again, we're looking for as many players as possible that can contribute, that can have a role and help our team grow and mature. And so Mark Hall is finding a role, and as well as Juwan. And it's fun to see that. You'll also, and probably have seen Chris Moore out there as another freshman at the nickel spot being developed.
When I asked you last week about the deep ball targets, you said that there were maybe more plays called, that the ball didn't end up going there. In this game, you were successful with the downfield pass. Was it a play calling change, or was it an execution change?
It was both. So a slight difference in targeting, again, but targeting only gets you as far as the look and is there separation and are you open? And if you're not, then the ball's not going to go there. And so as we continue to put the right players in the right spots and the right matchups with the right plays, then the result is the ball actually is delivered sometimes to where the first target was. And that's the way I define targeting, and we're getting just simply more clear about which players in what roles and at what time will help our team the most. And I'm impressed with the roles that our guys are playing, and the names that I've listed off today are doing a nice job.
Can you chart that, how many times the ball goes where you're first, and would you share sort of roughly?
I won't share, but yes, we do. Yeah.
The defensive line, again, I think if you factor in the nickel, you're playing 8 or 9 guys that you have confidence to go in the game. Is the depth there exceeded your hopes for that position? It was sort of looked thin at the outset.
I would say this, that the effort in which we want our players to play, how hard we want them to play, they're learning and adjusting to what that looks like as well. And so Coach Ruff does a really nice job of anticipating and seeing, and if it's not 100% as hard as they can go, then they're not going to stay in. And so there are players that their level of the confidence that we have in them is growing, but we're not certainly going to have someone out there that won't try as hard as they can try by conditioning or mental toughness. We're not going to allow that to happen for the sake of keeping an experienced or maybe more capable player, and we're going to change him. And so that message is being sent because of the simple pace that we would like to play.
Follow up on one of those defensive linemen. I know Moy will get bigger as he gets older here. Could he grow into a 3-4 nose tackle eventually?
He might. He's quick and explosive, and it'll be fun to see if for any of our first years, not just Juwan, if any of our first years, if they embrace the academic rigor, if they embrace the program rigor, if they will continually do what's right and mature day in and day out to develop into that. And that's something they have to show and demonstrate. Right now, for all of our first years, man, they could have bright futures if they choose to and if they want the help necessary. But again, the only way they're going to have the success on the field is what do they look like in the classroom? What do they look like in the community? What do they look like in support of their teammates? And if they do all that and can play well, then we'll see what he ends up looking like. All right, thanks, everybody.